Hello, Internet, and welcome to another Wednesday's Serial. So, I've had a few comics goings on, and I wanted to just talk about them. The first is positive to kind of wash out me talking about the two big things in this week of comics, because it kind of irked me on some level, and I just wanted to wrap it through and maybe see what you guys think. So, the first thing is there was a nice lady at the university nearby who wanted to interview me about what I thought about SpiderGwen. It was for a study, and I had to sign all these weird papers saying I'm okay and you can use my opinions. You have my consent. I think it was a standard form for things that are probably a bit more of a personal nature normally, but things they have to do. But anyways, I'm not going to breach anything by talking about it generally, I'm sure. So, she seemed really interested in how I found the character. I think she was somewhat disappointed in saying that, Spider-Verse was an event that happened. Spider-Gwen was, introduced there. And I just kind of read it as part of it, and then I liked it. Then I found out they were doing a comic with her, and I just kind of kept reading. It wasn't really a huge thing for me. And I talked to her a bit after her questions, and it turns out she's relatively new to comics. She's only been reading about a year, and primarily Spider-Gwen, so it's a character she really connected with for whatever reason. And I started trying to ask her a bit because she was saying she wanted to talk about female offshoot characters. Maybe that's the way I should phrase it, but Spider-Gwen being off of Spider-Man, but I mentioned, there was two other female Spider-Man spin-off characters that launched at the same time. I don't know if you've looked into them at all, but that might be some good compare-contrast, especially because they all crossed over in an event. And also maybe, some comparison looking at, how they did Batgirl recently, and then maybe throughout the ages, that sort of thing. And I kind of just rattled a bit, and that seemed to off-put her, so I kind of slowed my roll. I wasn't trying to mansplain it or anything. I was just trying to offer maybe a little more insight. In particular because she's doing this for an academic paper, and also because she's going to be presenting at apparently a couple conventions, maybe some public conventions, and I mean, if you're going to be putting yourself out in that light, you need to have your chops down, you need to have read your stuff. There's going to be too many people in the room that maybe will have read more than you, and if you haven't even gotten that far, it's not going to sing well. So, I don't know. Best interest, hope she does well. Maybe she has some different angles, is able to tie it to something more purely academic, to make it more in a realm where she can succeed with it. Yeah, but it was really cool. We also talked a lot about, what I liked and didn't like about the comic. Mostly I was trying to say overall I liked it. The main problem I have with the book is when they get guest artists with Spider-Gwen, which I've mentioned on here before, just because there's such a punk aesthetic and the art is so much about the personality and style of the comic that when that's not there, you feel it, and you feel it a lot more than you do with some guest artists in other books, and you usually feel that negatively as well. And it's not that the normal artists are so perfect or anything, but on Spider-Gwen they're perfect, and you don't really want anyone else. And I'd much rather wait a month than get an off-brand comic. One of my favorite stories actually felt like it was ruined because it was given to a guest artist, so but it was a lot of positives, and then talking about different females. But then she also started pressing, what do you think about Gwen Stacy as a character, with the legacy and everything? Because I brought up, I've been reading whatever. It's well, I got into this debate recently about Gwen Stacy and her legacy, because I think her and the original, Stan Lee and Ditko run of Spider-Man, and more after, but still Stan Lee. Initial Gwen before she was killed. I think she was important. I think she did more for the legacy of girlfriends in comics. Yeah, she was still very much just the girlfriend at that point. But there was some interesting dynamics there that I think as that came through and the idea of what Spider-Man was started influencing the entire industry, I think Gwen Stacy was a part of that. And I think her legacy is bigger than her death. Her death is a major part of it, don't get me wrong, but there was an argument I got into with the NerdSync guy about this, where he was saying that Gwen Stacy was really only important because of her death, and that a lot of creators were kind of sick of dealing with her and writing her, and maybe I disagree, which means I'm disagreeing with some old Spider-Man creators, I guess, but I don't really care. So I don't know. That's my take on that. There wasn't anything particularly interesting other than that. Maybe some back and forth and some confusion. She's asking me about favorite covers and stuff, and actually it's funny because not too long ago I went to go reorganize and put away most of my SpiderGwen comics, and because it essentially had started and restarted a few times, I was very confused about which issue 3 was which issue 3, and it took me a long time to get everything put away, because it's all so samey. So, and it's all the same story, creators. So how are you supposed to tell? Yeah. Also, I have been doing a bit of digging, and I've been reading a bit of Nick Spencer's Captain America, and it sucks. It's almost inconceivable to me how they make seemingly a wrong dramatic turn in every issue, but they do. I don't think it's any spoilers at this point, but I kind of want to dig in a bit on this idea. And if you haven't looked at the Secret Empire reveal yet, I'm just going to spoil it for you, because God, I hope I can keep people from buying and supporting that. It's something where I know we talk about a lot about, things we don't like, and why are they doing this, why are they doing that, that's disrespectful to creators or whatnot. I honestly think the problem with what they're doing with Captain America, and now the twist that they've added with Secret Empire, goes a step beyond normal, comic infighting, is the way I guess I'd phrase it for this. Making it so Captain America, due to the Cosmic Cube, and there's a line in the first issue that sums it up perfectly. This couldn't have happened. It's only because of the Cosmic Cube that this happens. So that's the linchpin they have that they're going to pull when they want to reset, obviously. But, man, what they've done is they've made it so Captain America has always been a member of Hydra. Now they've gone to painstaking lengths to try to separate Hydra from Nazis, while acknowledging the fact that Hydra was also supporting the Nazi movement at a period in history, but making sure that Hydra are not Nazis, which is bullshit, because there was a lot of Nazis in comics when it was coming out of World War II, and eventually people got sick of it and kind of got sick of seeing a hate symbol in, it was supposed to be younger entertainment. And so they went to Hydra, and that was, to the best of my understanding, the reason Hydra came around in the comics. I mean, they definitely play a lot like Nazis and have a lot of the same ideals, so whatever. So basically, they made Captain America a comic book Nazi. The level of tone deafness, especially right now, for that is huge. I mean, making Captain America a Nazi. I mean, there was an old Captain America where Captain America's brainwashed to be on the Nazi side, and he bows to Hitler and the Red Skull, and people point that out. But I mean, he was brainwashed, so it was a story, a tale for them to go through and talk about the idea that the Nazis would love to have a character like Captain America on their side, but they can't because of his strong ideals, and when he is himself, he will not. And there's something to be said for that there. It's also super old comics, so the subtext is minimal, usually. Though not always. But this story is going way beyond that, and they're taking it so that Steve Rogers' father beat his mother regularly up until a secret member of Hydra saves the family, but then kills the mother because they have big old plans for Steve Rogers. Which, not only is that deceitful and wrong, but when you start playing that out in your mind, I mean, every comic that's happened with Captain America kind of puts a weird spin on it, right? Especially considering how many times he's stopped Hydra threats and foiled the Red Skull. It's weird. And again, this couldn't have happened, right? So, but you keep bouncing back of that. This couldn't have happened, but we need to have it have happened for this, buzzworthy story. But now they're making it so that World War II wasn't won by the Allies, but the Axis powers, and the Allies used the Cosmic Cube to spin that around. So now you're going straight to the war directly and using a symbol of Captain America, who was punching Hitler on the cover of his comic before America got into the war effort, and helped normalize and bring around the idea that we should be fighting Nazis to America, and is a symbol of that we look to, that's historically pointed to in our culture. It's, a little factoid when people are talking about World War II, but it's taught in schools. Like, that's a bit of Americana right there. It's one of the pride points of comic books as a medium in American history. And they're taking that, and they're shitting on that idea. And that's why I think this is more than just the normal in and out. And I've seen a lot of comparisons from Dan Slott himself even, and I've argued with him directly on Twitter about this a few days, which has been weird. But Dan Slott saying, a lot of people came after me when Superior Spider-Man started. I wasn't thrilled about Superior Spider-Man when it happened. I came around on it. But Superior Spider-Man was a comic book story about characters held within the Spider-Man mythos. And I wasn't a big fan because I was going to be getting my Spider-Man comics for a while. Yeah, whiny, complainy comic book, in-out comic book fan stuff. Had some fun kind of hating on it, whatever. I mean, it wasn't for me at the moment. I got over it. It's actually a decent story that ended somewhat poorly because it was clearly rushed. But comparing that to what they're doing with Captain America, and literally, I mean, I know it's only a comic book and a story, and so them minimizing World War II, we don't need to, cry over necessarily. I'm just saying it's a shitty move. It's a bad story. It's a stupidly controversial thing that just kind of disrespects, the legacy of the character that they're writing about. And it's not good storytelling, I don't think. Just because of the I mean, this is something, and it is taste barriers here, definitely, but I don't know, it's 2017. Maybe we should leave World War II and Nazis alone and press forward with stories instead of doing shit like this. I don't know. It just feels hacky and lame. Speaking of hacky and lame, we shit on Marvel. Now let's go to DC. The Button, a Batman Flash crossover, which I haven't read much of, but I've seen a few pages of. They're evoking Watchmen and really dragging into the DCU. Now, I know this was coming. This happened when they started the Rebirth thing with the Rebirth issue. I honestly plumb forgot through sheer force of will, apparently. But they're throwing it in our faces, and this is back to comic book infighting and not on the level of Secret Empire, what Marvel's doing. So I think this is a lesser sin, but sucky nonetheless. I mean, we could talk about Alan Moore and Watchmen's rights and how they're bringing that up again. I'm not thrilled about it, but also there's some give and take in that argument on both sides, I think. There's the fact that Dave Gibbons was supposedly, if I'm understanding it correctly, was promised when they did before Watchmen years ago, when all the creators' rights stuff with Watchmen came up and was a big talking point in the comics community for a while. Dave Gibbons was kind of promised that they were doing this because they wanted to do some stuff with Watchmen, for obvious reasons, but they didn't want to bring it directly into the DCU, which was, them playing and doing something with it, but it was somewhat tasteful, right? And some of the comics were good, some were bad. That was going to happen, of course, and frankly, I haven't read any of them because I just didn't want to. I had no interest. But a lot of people seemed to like them. They were mostly, I think, all rightly received. None were considered great, as far as I know. But it happened, and it's more or less been forgotten about, so far as I know. I haven't heard people mention it, but I haven't really been in a place where I think people would bother to mention it anyways. So, yeah. But now they're doing this, and they're bringing the Watchmen characters directly into the DCU. There's supposed to be a Dr. Oz. Gee, I wonder what that's supposed to be. Actually, I have to admit, it's probably not Ozymandias because that seems too obvious. So, who knows? But more importantly, who cares? And what kind of bugged me, though, was that I kind of had a flinch point with this. Like, pure taste, morality barrier, whatever. Them bringing Watchmen to the DC universe, I think, is the true line of DC not being able to leave anything successful alone. And to not just, try to do something good on their own right. To me, that feels like a big line, and they're crossing it here. And I'm not a fan of it. I don't like it, so I'm not going to buy it. I understand some people are interested, curious, and they want to check it out. It bothers me that it doesn't seem like anyone's at least conflicted about that, or there isn't a big discussion going on about DC bothering to do this. Like, I know there's controversy every week now, right? But this actually feels like a point that maybe people should have some back and forth on, at the very least. I'm not saying you should, have 10 lashings if you buy the comic. I'm just saying maybe think about the seeds being ruined here. It's... I don't know. To me, this is the worst week in comics we've had in a damn long time. We're getting shitty moves by both companies, and it really makes me want to look towards other companies, and I don't know. It's just making me more jaded and wanting to pull back further from newer superhero stuff. That being said, I'm still loving, Aquaman, Nightwing, and Birds of Prey. I still want to read Spider-Man and Jessica Jones. There's comics I'm enjoying. But they're nowhere near this stuff. So, I don't know. I just wanted to put my 2 cents in there, and I know I haven't done a video, and I'm sorry I'm talking about something negative, but that does seem to get the blood up. So, here's hoping I just talk about a straight comic review sometime soon, but we'll see. Peace.